And overall, welcome back to the Crash MotoGP podcast. And you're getting a second podcast this week as more news has broke about the 2025 rider market. If you haven't seen it, Enea Bastianini and Maverick Vinales will ride for Red Bull KTM Tech3 next year in a rebrand of their MotoGP program on a multi-year deal, getting full factory support from KTM. That means Jack Miller and Augusto Fernandez are now out. I'm joined by Pete McLaren. Pete, more news this week again to discuss. It's a big step and a big statement from KTM, isn't it, to announce this deal?
It is big double signing, yeah. The Bastianini news had kind of leaked, hasn't it? That wasn't so much of a surprise, but the Vinales news has moved very quickly. That's quite a big shock, isn't it? Certainly when they finished testing at Mugello, wasn't it, and everything else. I think Vinales had barely been told that Jorge Martin was joining Aprilia, and then now here we are. And Vinales is leaving. So yeah, KTM become the first manufacturer to actually complete their lineup. So there we go. They've got all four bikes there. As you say, the Tech3 guys, they'll have to get the paintbrushes out again and change the livery for how many times is it now? 3 or 4 times?
It's 3 times KTM? In like 4 years, isn't it? Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And that's really all it is, let's be honest, isn't it? Acosta is on a full factory KTM now, and it's just that the colours are different. And, maybe it is that. Maybe it's the fact that Acosta is the leading KTM at the moment, but he's on the red bike with the gas colours. Maybe they've decided that, we want them all in KTMs, and whoever's up there, whoever's leading it next year, if these two new guys at the Tech3 team are ahead of Acosta and Bindo, as probably will happen in some races, it'll be a KTM up there rather than a red bike. Maybe they've decided just for the advertising, the marketing, that's better for them. So, yeah, there's going to be a big visual change and a big rider change.
Definitely, yeah. It seems to me that, people are shocked that the gas branding is gone. But, like you say, it's a switch. From the press release, they say Red Bull Orange Quartet. And that, to me, just screams factory, doesn't it? It's like they want everyone, like you say, no matter who wins, if it's on the podium, you're going to know it's a KTM. And maybe this, like you say, with the cost of being the leading bike, they've just had enough of it. And if Ducati are maybe listening to this, you could have done the same maybe with Marquez and Martin in the future, but that's all sorted now. But I want to get to the like you said, the Enea Bastianini move isn't a shock. We've kind of known about this for a week or so. But the Maverick Vinales news, like you say, it's moved pretty quickly, and the photos you see of Maverick with Pit Barrer, it looks like he's flown maybe to the Austrian factory to get these photos taken. And what do you think has triggered this for Maverick? Because, as you know, it's been his best year on the Aprilia. It looks like it's the year that he's clicked with it. He's got the Grand Prix win, the sprint wins, but he's had enough of Aprilia and he wants to go try and win on another bike now, which is a big move for Maverick, isn't it, at this stage of his career?
It is, it's not long ago we were celebrating him becoming the first guy to win with 3 different manufacturers. Now he's trying to make it 4. The guy likes a challenge, doesn't he? There's no doubt about that. And, we were speaking previously that he said, look, his decision on his future, he always made clear that it wasn't definite he'd stay at Aprilia. But he said, obviously there were rumours about Honda, weren't there? And he said, look, it'll be about performance. It'll be about what's best for my career. So we don't know exactly what Maverick's reasons are because no one's spoken to him since he's signed, obviously. But going off those words, he has to have believed that, his performance, or the best performance, lies at KTM, which is an interesting one because they're quite even, aren't they? I think there's only 2 points between Aprilia and KTM in the constructors at the moment. Acosta is only 1 place ahead of him as the top KTM in the Riders' Championship. KTM have won more Grand Prix, haven't they, in the Premier class? But when was the last dry win? I think you've said it previously. It was Oliveira in
21 at Catalunya, yeah.
There we are, yeah. Since then, Aprilia have won, 4 races? So performance-wise, there's no obvious winner there. And it's quite interesting that he's chosen to make a new start at another team when it seems like everything has sort of been clicking into place at Aprilia. Although we have to say, since Cota, it dropped away again, hasn't it? And it's going to be interesting to find out from Maverick, what exactly his reasons were for that.
Yeah, you read into things, you see it in the press. It's like KTM were, like you said, they wanted to keep all 4 riders, like they said at the start of the year they had currently, but they've ended up switching 2 of them out. But with Maverick, it seems that he has kind of not maybe felt the love from Aprilia that he was expecting. They were waiting on Alicia Spargo to make his decision first, and then they kept saying, we want to keep Maverick, but the talks hadn't really started yet. Do you think that Maverick, and like you say, he didn't know really that Jorge Martin had joined the team until he had checked social media? Massimo Rivola said that we didn't really get around to telling him because it was such a quick deal. When he's won Grand Prix this year and he's the top rider for the team, it's probably rubbed him up the wrong way, hasn't it, Pete?
I'm sure it would be a factor, wouldn't it? Yeah, I mean, Aprilia, in fairness, in public, have been very much saying we want to keep Maverick. Rivola's saying it'd make him the happiest person if he stays and everything else. But then you also come to the practical side of things, which is Jorge Martin. That would have been it's a big signing, a big money signing, we assume. Now, what budget is left for the other factory rider? You've got things like that, haven't you? And so, as well as the fact that maybe Maverick feels like, well, hang on, all the attention went on signing Jorge Martin, and now they're going to look at me, and maybe he didn't like that. But yeah, interesting. Bottom line is Aprilia losing both of their factory riders, having had that stable lineup for so long, haven't they? And so interesting to see who now takes that ride.
Yeah, we'll come on to that in a moment about who will replace Maverick now, because it's such a coveted seat. It's maybe surprised a lot of team managers and rider managers. They're probably ringing Aprilia right now to see what the situation is. But looking at the lineup, the Tech 3 now have two new riders, have never touched a KTM before. They're coming from Ducati, Aprilia. It's a big step, isn't it? It's a risk from KTM, but it's also showing them they're getting proven race winners. They're having the full factory support, like they say, on multi-year deals, which 2 years really until the next deal is. But it could be a real success, Pete. But also there's an element of risk as well when it comes to having such two riders who are riding two different machines really to come into the same team and ride this KTM.
Yeah, definitely. You don't know what they're going to do whenever someone changes bikes to you, and yeah, certainly they, KTM, they're not afraid to take a risk, are they? We know that they will, they'll take people, they'll make big decisions, as we've seen now. They've never been afraid to sort of shake things up, shake the project up if they think that's what needs to happen. And yeah, these two guys, as you say, proven race winners, bringing that knowledge from two different competitive bikes, two other European bikes, so they're bringing all that in. That's going to be useful for the engineers as well. So you've got to believe it's going to help the whole project. And yeah, very strong lineup. Yeah, very strong lineup. 4 riders, 3 of them Grand Prix winners, and let's face it, Acosta could well make that 4 before the end of this year.
Just looking at it as well, 4 of them world champions in different classes, so it's a very strong lineup in KTM. To me, it signals they're not here to mess about anymore. Pep Bauer says at the start of the year they're here to win, and this is the biggest intent that I've seen from them, that they mean it next year. And I'm really excited to see how testing goes for them and just how their approach changes. But like we say, 2 people in, 2 people out. Jack Miller, we'll talk about what happens to him now, because you can imagine that Jack, I think he'll stay in MotoGP, but it's where he's going to end up. Most likely destination screams to me potentially Honda. Could you see that happening?
Yeah, I think definitely as a factory seat, that's got to be his best chance, if you like. There's been rumours in the past of some sort of contact between Jack and Repsol Honda. Obviously, he began his MotoGP career at Honda, didn't he, as a factory signed rider, not in the factory team, but he was contracted to HRC for those first few years, and then he went across to Ducati. So yeah, I mean, and it's somebody, with Jack's experience, he's coming off the Ducati, he's coming off the KTM. If you're a Japanese manufacturer, and you can also add into that the whole Yamaha Pramac thing, isn't it? We were speaking a minute ago off air, but so again, Jack could bring a lot of knowledge with him. He's a proven race winner. He's been on 2 of the top bikes in MotoGP at the moment. All of that kind of stuff will be very useful, especially for the Japanese as they're trying to develop. So I would imagine both Japanese teams potentially will be interested. I mean, let's remember that Quartararo's teammate is still to be decided as well. So yeah, but I think probably Honda, you would say, and Pramac, his former team, they loved him there, didn't they? He went from Pramac to the factory Ducati team, but yeah, I should think he'll Aki Ayo, his manager, will be on the phone to both of those guys.
Yeah, it's a big change for Jack. I think he kind of said a few weeks ago that he hasn't just wanted to join this project and ride it for 2 years. He kind of wanted to stay with KTM, and to be honest, I kind of got the sense that he was just maybe going to drop down into Tech 3, but clearly not in this case. I don't know if Jack wants to maybe stay with KTM in the test rider role. Their test team's already so strong, but I think he's got a lot to give still in terms of racing in MotoGP. And yeah, A move back to Pramac, could see it happening, and a move to Honda, who, let's be honest, they would love to have someone like that, because you say Pete's had experience of the European bikes that have had that upward curve since maybe, he was in Pramac 2019, 2018, and then he was on that upward curve with Ducati when Honda kind of start dip. So yeah, a lot of experience as well in the KTM. I think that is a real chance for them. But then Augusto Fernandez, it's hard to rate with Augusto. He's kind of had a quite quiet year this year. He was only rookie last year, but he had some good performances. But this year just hasn't really gelled, has he, Pete? And to be honest, if someone was going to get moved out, it was going to be him, wasn't it?
Yeah, certainly on paper. And I think, Augusto Fernandez, you've got to say, he's a realist. He's known that he needs results, and it's not happening the way he wants. And, after what he got at fourth place, didn't he, at Le Mans last year, that really turned heads and secured him the ride for this year, really. And yeah, since testing, he just hasn't been comfortable on the bike, and he's been looking for the right balance, the right settings. And he's not there yet with it. But that being said, now this decision is taken, all that weight is off his shoulders. You wouldn't be at all surprised if he the performance rises again. Yeah. So let's see. There's still a lot of places up for grabs, and we saw with Digia last year how somebody can just turn around their year. And if they really hit form in the second half of the year, and suddenly everything changes. It's all about results, as we've seen from today's announcements.
That's it, exactly, and it's a results-based business, and what it does do, like I said, Aprilia are now freed up for a second factory seat that maybe many wouldn't have thought was possible. And who do you think now Aprilia turn to? As you said, budget comes into it, because we can't imagine a Jorge Martin signed a big-ish deal, and that will take up the budget, but they have a lot of options. They've always wanted an Italian rider, Pete, that's where we'll start. So Italian riders that are free, it's just VR46 really, isn't it? And so Marco Bezzecchi and Fabio Di Gianantonio, could you see either of them two moving across to Aprilia? That would be a nice lineup, wouldn't it?
It would, yeah, and especially Bezzecchi. Aleix dropped that hint, wasn't it? I don't know if it was Barcelona or Mugello, but when there were all the rumours about Bastianini, and who knows if Bastianini, if he knew that this factory Aprilia seat might have been ready, might he have made his choice a bit more difficult? But there we go. But anyway, the seat is now free, and so Bezzecchi, Aleix is very in with the management. We know he played a role in getting Jorge Martin over. So if Aleix is saying things like, yeah, Bastianini, but I like Bezzecchi as well, I mean, that tells you also that maybe that's the thinking at the upper end of Aprilia. So yeah, I think Bez has got to be the running. We know he wants to be a factory rider. They tried to sign him originally when he was in Moto 2, but the bike wasn't as good then, and he turned them down and went with the satellite Ducati with VR46. So yeah, he's got to be on the radar. And yeah, Digia, I keep saying his name for various rides, don't I? But I just think, if you value for money, he must be incredible. Definitely. Because he's probably one of the most underrated guys on the grid still, isn't he? But he's up there, he's performing again. Okay, Mark is by far the best GP23, but after Mark,
he's right in there, isn't he?
Digia's up there, isn't he? So yeah, young Italian guy, plenty of room to still improve. I think he's got to be in the running as well. So yeah, I think if you've got to imagine now that they've had this blow of losing Maverick, at least they can get the consolation of the Italian rider somewhere in their lineup, whether it's Trackhouse or the factory team.
Yeah, and then we'll look in-house now. We can say that for Aprilia, they have two options really now to promote. That's either Trackhouse rider, so Miguel Oliveira or Ralph Fernandez. Who do you think out of those two would get the nod? It's difficult to say, isn't it? Because you have to look at different aspects. Because obviously Miguel Oliveira is such a hugely popular rider in Portugal. He has that pull of doing that, but his results haven't been as great this season as he would have expected. But on the other side, Ralph Fernandez is coming good, and he's younger. What decision factors would Aprilia think there? Would they want to maybe promote the younger rider or go for the bigger name in Oliveira?
There's got to be quite a pull in terms of keeping the guys that they've got now, because they've lost Aleix, they've lost Maverick, they've got Martin coming in. We know factories, they don't like to change both of their factory riders, do they, to guys that aren't on the bike. It's different if you're promoting somebody from a satellite team, because they can already ride the bike. But you've got Martin coming in. No one quite knows what he's going to do until he gets on the bike. He hasn't led the development of a factory, has he? He's been part of the development at Ducati, but Aprilia is a smaller sort of setup. They don't have as many bikes, so the factory riders take on a much bigger share of leading the development. So we've got to see how he settles into that role. He's never done a lap on an RSGP. So, yeah, you've got to imagine that the other guys that you say are at the Trackhouse team now, that this definitely boosts their chances, doesn't it? You've got Oliveira on the 24 bike, Raul on the 23, although it sounds like he'll get the 24 by Silverstone, I think, after the summer break. So then there'll be an equal comparison, if you like. Oliveira, proven winner, but again, in terms of the results, as you say, this year's not been easy for him. He's not looking comfortable on the bike. I think that would be the obvious. I mean, Aprilia would be so much easier for them if Oliveira just really gelled with that bike and started performing, because it would then be, he's a proven winner. He can ride the RSGP well. Everything's great. Let's move him into the factory team, or at least keep him on, the best bike at Trackhouse. But we've got to wait and see, haven't we? Yeah, it's a difficult one for them, isn't it? As I say, they're losing the two guys that have led the project, and to lose other guys that have experience of their bike as well would be quite a gamble. But let's see. I mean, Raul Fernandez, as you say, is the interesting one, because he has suddenly hit form, hasn't he, on that 23 bike and leading the race in Catalonia and everything else. So if he can put in some more rides like that, heading up to now this crucial period, the 2 races before the summer break, who knows? Maybe he'll get the nod.
It's a big call for Aprilia. Like you say, the dynamic of their team has changed in a few weeks, and you could end up having a factory team when you look at it if no one's actually ever ridden an Aprilia. But then, like you say, you want to have someone that can know how to ride the bike, essentially. And
just on that, Jordan, you've reminded me there. Yeah, Maverick was asked, who would you pick to be? This is before Martin had signed. Who would you pick to replace Aleix? And he said, well, it's a difficult one to answer, but he went, if you're asking me who's got the most similar style to me, it's Miguel Oliveira. So again, that's another thing that maybe goes in Miguel's favour. And then if you look outside of Aprilia, you've got guys like Joan Mir who are still weighing up where to go. You've got the Davide Brivio link there, so everyone's sort of putting those 2 and 2 together there. But maybe now it's not potentially Trackhouse. Maybe, get a former world champion in at the factory Aprilia team.
That was going to be my next question. Joan Mir, I don't know, I've seen a lot of reaction this morning from people when they realised that the Aprilia seat's free, and I checked all the comments and they keep saying Mir's going to go to Aprilia now, and I'm like, well, maybe, but would you put him? Could it be a thing for Aprilia? Say to him, we don't have the budget to pay you what you probably get at Honda, but we could offer you either the satellite Trackhouse, or could it be the factory Aprilia? What do you think about that, Pete? He's been saying that the decision's coming for his time to think about the future, and maybe after Assen, I don't know when he wants to decide that, but this is maybe going to accelerate it now, knowing these seats are free, isn't it? Mir could end up in the Aprilia setup, but I don't know where yet. Could it maybe be with Brivio, like you say, or would they chance putting him into the factory team? It's difficult, isn't it, for Aprilia?
It is. I think it will come as a surprise to a lot of riders that this factory Aprilia seat is suddenly available. Yeah, the assumption was that it was only the Trackhouse seats that would be free, and that Maverick would stay on alongside Martin. But yeah, Joan Mir, he's been saying these sort of comments that he's looked at what Mark's done, stepping down to a satellite team, and in the space of 5-6 races, he's back in title contention almost. Okay, he hasn't won a race yet, but he's done enough to secure the best bike on the grid for next year. So he's seen that. He's seen how things can instantly change if you're on the right machinery, if you like. You're on a competitive bike, even if you're not in the top team. And that's got to be tempting for him. Money, I think, is not going to be an issue for Mir. I think just as with Marquez, I think it's a similar situation there, where he's made money, he's won world championships, he's been a factory rider at Suzuki for years, he's been now factory rider at Honda. I think it is about performance, and I think Mir will be looking very seriously at that seat. But also look at his former teammate Alex Rins, another proven race winner.
True.
He's someone else who I'm sure will be saying, hey guys, the Aprilia, of course, the character of it is probably the most similar to a Yamaha, isn't it? And the inline fours, that corner speed sort of style. So that's also why you'd maybe look at the guys that were quick on the Suzuki, and Rins was obviously, he won more races than Mir even, but both of them did well. So again, that's going to count in their favour when you're doing those sort of predictions of who will go well on this bike without them even doing a lap on it. And so yeah, I think those guys, both of those guys, you would be in considering for this role.
Yeah, and these moves, to be honest, from KTM today, it doesn't really make the rider market any clearer, Pete, does it? When you think about it, because you still have to settle who replaces Marquez, who replaces, I don't know. It's all Pramac as well. That's a real thing that comes into, because you don't know what they're going to do. But say for Mir, for example, we've touched on the Aprilia link. Could he go to Gresini and do it that way? Like you say, his comments, he's seen what he keeps saying about what Marquez has done. I think he maybe would want that more because he knows, yeah, that's Ducati. It'll be the 24 most likely, but still the race winning bike, probably going to be the championship winning bike. That would be a good option for him, wouldn't it?
Definitely, yeah. And both Gresini and Pramac, they've lost their big name rider, haven't they? And they want someone else in there. So it's guys like Mir, the guys like Jack Miller, proven race winners, that kind of thing. They're going to look for those kind of guys, aren't they, to really take over from the guys they're losing in some way, because it is a big blow to lose, obviously, Marc at Gresini and Jorge Martin at Pramac. So yeah, I think it's a good point. I mean, that would be the safest option, wouldn't it? Would be to literally follow in Marc's footsteps and go from Repsol Honda to Gresini. It's got to be something that he's considering. But as we say, now suddenly there's a factory Aprilia potentially in the mix that maybe he wasn't because didn't know was going to be available, and suddenly that shakes things up, doesn't it? Because a factory seat is a factory seat, and we've seen that a lot of riders they will give up competitive satellite rides to go to a factory seat because they know that's where they want to be at some point in their career. Let's say different for guys like Mir that have been there all of their career, and they know that it's about more than that. It's about having the right bike. It's not just about being in the factory team. So definitely. I think as we've said, that the Pramac decision is still really the main one. We've just all been sort of blindsided by this sudden Maverick move over to the side here. But the big question about what happens with Pramac, what bikes do they ride, who rides, and then who rides them is still there.
Yeah, and the last question I have for you is a link back to Aprilia. Moto 2, kind of more news came out about Joe Roberts. They're kind of saying it's not really the case. It could be an American and an American team. Do you think that the situation changes now, knowing with Maverick gone, that might be the case?
It definitely means there's a seat free, isn't there? As we say, there's more places at Aprilia than we thought. So I mean, it's not going to do any harm. But yeah, I mean, this whole thing about kind of just sort of cooling the speculation, I suppose you could say, with Joe Roberts and the Trackhouse team. It's been going on for a few races now. We heard it from Brivio, and then, as you say, we've now heard it from Rivola as well, that it's not just going to be an automatic deal that, okay, fast American team. Doesn't mean that Joe Roberts won't be in MotoGP somewhere else, of course. That I mean, he's fighting for the lead of the Moto2 Championship. Let's see where he goes from here. But I mean, there's other teams that could quite happily, and you're mentioning the satellite teams, and MotoGP would love an American rider if he's proving, look, I'm fast enough to move up, and especially if he wins the Moto2 title, it's almost a given, isn't it, that the world champion moves up. So he's only 7 points behind, I think, isn't he, from Sergio Gadea in the lead? So Garcia, sorry, in the lead, and so I mean, he's in the running. Maybe not a Trackhouse, as we say, but who knows? Maybe this Maverick. We don't know what Aprilia's reaction is going to be, do we? This has come pretty much out of the blue, and so we've got to see how do they play this? What's their response to this? Do they move quick now to lock at least some of their riders down? Because at the moment you've got KTM, all 4 seats filled, and you've got Aprilia with only 1 rider out of the 4. So maybe they're going to want to get some deals done.
Yeah. It's difficult because, like you say, it depends what avenue they go down, because do they want to compare Oliveira and Fernandez on the 24s when he eventually gets it, so they have a little window there to understand, or do they compare the 23 data with what Oliveira did, or he was on the 22, wasn't he? So you can't really do that. So yeah, it's up to Aprilia now. Do they pull the trigger fast, like you say, or do they wait it out until maybe Pramac gets sorted? But then you lose riders then that way if they keep Ducati. So it's so complex, and yeah, this news hasn't really helped anything, to be honest. This has kind of made it more of a guessing game for everything. So yeah, KTM, as you say, Pete, that's the big takeaway today. They've locked down everyone. They've got their team settled. They can now focus on the future. And it's a pretty strong lineup, Yeah, a great move from KTM. Shows that they've mean business for MotoGP in 2025. But any last thoughts, Pete, on today's news? Anything you want to add to it?
I think just to go right back to what you said at the start, and KTM going with sort of the Ducati format almost, and we were talking, weren't we, about the same livery. But if we put that aside and just going with having not just one strong rider, not just two strong riders, but 3-4 strong riders, which is what Ducati have got this year, isn't it? Fighting at the front, and it seems like KTM have gone for that kind of model. They've realised that even two strong riders is not enough, and so they've gone all out to get proven race winners pretty much on every bike. As we say, Acosta at the moment, but I mean, no one has any doubts about his capabilities, do they? So this is 4 strong riders that they've got, and it means that basically there should be a KTM up front at every race, shouldn't there? Even if one or two of them are having bad days, as we've seen this year with Brad and Jack when they've had problems in qualifying or something in Q1. Acosta's been up there. I mean, we can expect more of the same next year. And now you've got the fourth bike as well. There's no weak link at all, is there, on paper? And it's going to be interesting to see who, how does Maverick adapt to this? How does Bastianini adapt to this? Who will adapt the quickest? Will they be pushing Acosta and Brad Binder? Interesting to see.
Yeah, and even when you say that, it's 4 different riding styles. When I even visually look at them all, they're all so different. Acosta's so front end heavy. Binder's got that real aggressive leaning out style, and Maverick's so good at just corner exit and everything. But Enea's so good on his tires and how he conserves everything. KTM have got an absolute. I think it's a weapon of a team, to be honest. It's any 4 of those riders, and like you say, the big thing is all 4 of them are getting identical machinery, so it's a real factory push here from KTM. And yeah, bring on 2025. Can't even believe I'm saying that. It's not even finished 2024. Not even halfway through it yet. So yeah, KTM made the big move, and all the rest will fall into place, I can imagine, over the next month or so. So yeah, you got an extra podcast, guys. Hope you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed it on YouTube, like the video, tell us your thoughts in the comments. Or if you listen to it on Apple, give us a 5-star review. Same on Spotify. And we'll see you next week for another podcast.